Hello everyone, it's Big Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video review, and this might be my full-on spoiler review of Supergirl 2026. There may also be spoilers for all other movies and TV series set within James Gunn's DC universe, so also just beware. So this won't be a chronological breakdown of the movie itself, but much more of a free-flowing discussion of the elements of which I felt worked well and didn't work quite as well within the film itself. And you can check out my non-spoiler review of the film also, and I'll leave a link within the description. So the first topic I want to talk about here is the character Supergirl herself and the ongoing deconstruction that we're seeing far too often within these movies today. And this is where normally I have to break tradition and go straight to the climactic act of the movie itself and the huge decision that Supergirl makes. So this is following the big elaborate big battle that we get standard within superheroes, and we see that Krem has essentially been defeated, and Ruthyre gets to that point where she draws her sword and wants to claim her revenge, and Kara talks her out of it. So in the first part you think, well, that is classic superhero story, the main superhero character convincing the secondary personality not to take violence, not to take the ultimate revenge, to learn better and be better and take the morally higher choice. So that's fine and that's all good. So when Supergirl approaches Krem and he's lying on the ground, you think, well, maybe she'll lock him up in some prison. But no, she decides herself to take the sword and kill him. Stab him not once, but twice. I think she stabs him once in the neck and then stabs him in the chest. And despite the fact that I wasn't really invested fully in the story anyway, you're still kind of staring at this moment and thinking, what the hell happened here? Why is, yet again, Supergirl, the main character, the main hero character, stabbing the main villain when she's just talked the other person out of doing it? Now, I'm not as precious about heroes killing the villain if you can make it a convincing part of the story, if you can generate a sequence where if the hero has necessarily no other choice, or it's much more of a big struggle between the two and the hero inadvertently kills them, or the villain goes to make a final strike and the hero evades it and the villain somehow gets sucked in some sort of portal or gets caught up in some sort of mechanical device. But when the hero willingly kills the lead villain when they don't have to, and the lead villain is clearly defeated, then I think it's much more of a problem, and it's compounded even more so when you're dealing with a Superman or Supergirl. And it was completely unnecessary and not really in tune with the character, even though here for the most part it was the carefree, very cynical, nonchalant personality that we knew we were getting going into this film anyway. But even that personality you didn't really deem as an overall killer. Yes, we did have sequences before where she's fighting multiple foes, but that's when they've cornered her around. That's where she literally has no choice. She has to fight her way through in order to defeat these guys. Many times she's outnumbered 15 or 20 to 1. So that's a prime example of what I'm talking about, when the hero has literally no choice but to fight their way through. But the standard storytelling is that the hero always reverts not to kill that person when they clearly could. That's what makes them the hero in many ways. So to have her just kill Krem at the end here and then not even let the moment linger on, not even have the character to reflect on it, or even have Ruthyre reflect on it, again, it's just spitting in the face of the ideology of a inspirational character like a Superman and Supergirl. And unfortunately, it does give vibes of the conclusion that what we had with Man of Steel once more, where it was a similar situation where Superman had upteenth options not to kill Zod, but he decides to do it anyway. So it's just further deconstruction. I know from the original source comic book, Kara did send Krem to the Phantom Zone. As we all know, the Phantom Zone is that prison where the villains can go where they won't hurt anybody else, but they're in this kind of wandering space. And I think that's a good way to have the main Superman or Supergirl characters make sure that they deal with the villain without killing them. That's a classic storytelling beat, but here it just felt really unnecessary and just more James Gunn deconstruction of the actual character. We'll then talk about what I felt was the best section of the film, and that was the Krypton Argo City origins. We had a very good flashback in my opinion where we saw the parents remarking on the fact that Krypton was facing a possible destruction. They did make reference to Jor-El that we had created from the Superman movie, And that was another controversial point where we had learned in that film that the parents had sent Clark initially to conquer planet Earth, which is, of course, again, against the whole ideology of the Superman mythos. And they mentioned that here, and we see Kara's people bracing for the fact when the destruction comes, and they segment a section of the city in order to protect themselves from the ongoing destruction. And then we follow on from the fact that they realised that by segmenting off that city, they caused some sort of underground swelling of the poisonous substances within the surface, which of course is kryptonite. And then later on they find out that they are all suffering from it, and then this is what causes them to send Kara into space in order for her to not get corrupted by the surface. So that was a bit of a different take, and maybe the more Superman purists could take criticism with that, and I understand fully. The other criticism is that why has such a technology advanced race not had spaceships that surely some people would have been able to get into in an Omega level situation like this and escape the planet? So all of those criticisms are very valid also, but I just felt these sequences were handled very well. This is the one time where I think the film did manage to generate a sense of pathos and potential emotional weight. I liked the actors that played Kara's parents. They did that very well. And again, there was some sort of heartfelt moments here. And I liked the mythological origins. I love the Superman origin story. I love the Silver Surfer origin story as well, when you have this kind of real gravitas situation in terms of the home planet being destroyed and how the character has to deal with that in that adult age. I think that's great. So I did like these sections here involving the origins of Kara, and overall I think it was the best section of the film, and I liked the musical soundtracks that plays during these sequences. So we then talk about David Corenswet as Superman, and he appeared in some sort of flashbacks. Well, he firstly appeared in the opening shots of the film. Again, this was shown in the trailers where he has a video message to Kara asking her to come home. And then we see later on, following the destruction of Krypton and then Supergirl being sent in space, her landing on planet Earth, and then he appearing in the Fortress of Solitude. And yes, we could raise some questions of how, if the parents knew that Clark had potentially been sent to conquer Earth, why would they send Kara alongside him on planet Earth if they felt that that was his overall goal? But again, it's a case of, if you weren't a fan of the adaptation of Superman in the film from last year, then you wouldn't really be excited to see Corenswet showing up here. And it's more the case of him still not knowing or not being fully confident. You know, he seems completely overruled by this situation. He's stuttering to a certain extent. The fact that he doesn't know the native language that she's speaking, that doesn't really make sense given the fact that he's grown up now. When you would have felt he's got the fortress, he would have learned the language by now. Surely he should have done. So again, that didn't make sense. The suit still looks terrible. It still looks awful. I don't think they're really going to change it for the Man of Tomorrow sequel, which is unfortunate. But yeah, just didn't really like this version of Superman. It also raised the question as to what exactly Kara had been doing. We had other flashbacks when she'd been on planet Earth for some time. We see the shots where she's standing in the room alongside Krypto and she's listening to the music. So what's she been doing all this time then, right? As Superman has been grown up, remember from the first movie, he has been in the role of the Earth's protector for over 3 years. So what's Kara been doing all this time? Where has she been doing? Has she been in training? What's she been doing? So maybe again, this was probably in the extended version. There were likely more sequences that showed Kara on Earth growing up with Clark and being trained. Again, that's classic Supergirl story, and I think, yeah, you should be seeing that. Even though it's Superman being more involved, it's also building the character of Kara and getting us to understand her motivations more. You know, what exactly sent her on this drunken spiral? What exactly motivated her to go solo in outer space and not stay with Clark and learn to be more of a superhero? So all of those things could have added more weight to the character, and yes, would have meant it would have been a longer movie, but I think it would have made it a much more substantial film also. So again, still not liking David Corenswet's Superman, but I think if you're going to have him in there, show more sequences of him training Kara and trying to build her much more into the ultimate hero that she'll become to be later on down the line. We then talk of Jason Momoa's Lobo. Again, another major selling point in this film. As we all know, Jason Momoa, for the most part, adopts his own screen personality. into his characters that he plays, and that can have good results and sometimes bad results. But obviously, as a character of Lobo, it's very much tailor-made for his own screen persona. And I think overall Lobo was fine. I mean, I don't think you could complain too much. He certainly looked like the character. He played the character enough, but in many ways you could still argue, why is he there? We see him meeting Ruthyre and Supergirl in the bar beginning, and he just wants to take down one of the other members of the brigand group. So I think it would have been far better if Lobo actually had to hunt down Krem also. So that would have given everybody from Supergirl, Ruthyre and Lobo a common goal, right? A common quest to take down the leader of the group. So that would have then made it where you should have had a narrative with all three of them are together as one, and they're going on to the quest as one, and then that's when you could have made Lobo much more integral to the piece, and you could have had much more scope for charisma and character dynamic bouncing off between all of the three characters. But really, why does Lobo care whether they fight Krem or not? He literally could just go up there and apprehend one of the other members and then go and get his bounty collection. He doesn't need to hang around Supergirl or Kara. He doesn't need to save them. He doesn't need to help them at all. He could just go about his own common goal. So why is he still there? Why does he need to be there at all? So again, that's just lack of writing. And as we all know, if we're being honest, Lobo was just thrown in there because they weren't confident enough in Supergirl being able to sell to audiences on their own. I mean, this is really why you had Superman in there also. So Lobo wasn't bad. I mean, he's involved in the final sequence again, where basically it's him and Supergirl taking on all comers. This is all shown in the trailers. Like, most of the movie was shown in the trailers, if we're being brutally honest. But yeah, it wasn't a bad performance or involvement with Lobo, just not necessarily an essential one. So we'll quickly talk on Ruthyre as a character, and as I said in my non-spoiler review, I felt she was very lightweight. The sequence where we see her and her family, basically her parents being killed by Krem, should have really been the emotional crux of the story, and throughout the film we should have really felt her pain, her angst, her torment. And Supergirl, seeing all of those elements, should have made her deal with her torment more, and then that's when she goes to persuade Ruthyre that violence is not the answer. So the potential and scope was there, but they just didn't really maximise it. And I just think it was more a case of how the character was written. It just very lightweight. I think it would have benefited more if the character was perhaps a little bit older, because it just didn't seem logical how this young little kid is walking into these bars with only this sword and expecting other people to just help her. I mean, that's what we saw in the opening sequence, where she gets a sword and basically the big alien just takes it off her. So it just makes the character seem very naive and very clueless in many ways, that she could feel that she could just walk in here on her own and without any real clout or authority and just expect people to help her. It just didn't really make a lot of sense. I think it would have been far better if, let's say, Kara had found her stranded and abandoned and sympathised with her that way. I think that would have felt a bit more kind of genuine to the overall character. But yeah, she's just lightweight. Not an awful performance. I did like the scene where you have her and Lobo trapped in the prison, and she showed some sort of ingenuity in getting out of the prison. That's fine, and that impressed Lobo. Okay, but overall the character just wasn't really much to talk about. And we could say the same obviously with Krem. Not really much to expand on here, just really one note. I said in my non-spoiler review, they could have easily delved into Superman's rogues gallery, because if we're being honest, Supergirl doesn't really have an extensive rogues gallery of her own. That was emphasised in the CW series, how they kept using Superman villains or Superman characters for the Supergirl series. So yeah, if need be, use a Superman character or write your own character. Yes, we have this in the source material, but they just didn't really do anything with this character. Nothing special about his own motivation or his overall goal. No emotion connection to Supergirl in many sense. He's just a thug. And overall, you know, the power scaling was confusing to how exactly powerful he is. Supergirl could have easily beaten him multiple times, but chose not to. So again, that was very confusing overall. So we talk about the movie's ending, which I've kind of covered in the beginning of the video. As I mentioned, they defeat Krem in the big large battle. Ruthyre goes to kill him. Supergirl talks her out of it before killing him herself. Lobo kind of drives away in the background. I don't really know what he's up to. We see the characters reconnect. They find the antidote and they're able to save Krypton. Again, a very weak plot point in this overall story arc. It seems that Ruthyre is going to stay with her aunt. Again, where was her aunt in all of this? How did Ruthyre have any money or means or resources to travel around to keep finding Kara? Again, another way you could question about this movie. But the two decide to go together and celebrate Kara's birthday. And then we see Kara back on planet Earth with Clark in Metropolis. And again, what has exactly motivated Kara to go back to planet Earth? There's been nothing there. All she's done throughout this entire movie is help get revenge for Ruthyre. What was there to make her decide to think, right, I need to go back to planet Earth now and rebuild my life? Why does she choose to stay on planet Earth? What is there for her on planet Earth? We never get any sense of any friends or any relationships that we had on planet Earth for her. Yes, she's got Clark there, but again, there wasn't really enough of a motivation for her to go back to planet Earth. The movie didn't find any justification for her to go back and spend time with Clark. So she just decides to stay there because of for whatever reasons. Whether she'll appear in Man of Tomorrow, I mean, it makes logical sense that she should do if she's staying on there on planet Earth. So we'll wait to see further how involved she'll be. I mean, again, you could argue that's going to take away from Superman, but we'll wait and see what happens there. And basically that's it. There was no end credit stingers. I think that's a sign of they still really don't know where they're heading with this universe in general. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know who's going to be involved, who's going ahead. I mean, we know we've got the Lantern series coming up. They've got, for some reason, an upcoming Krypton animated series. I don't know why they're doing that. It seems that we are going to get the Matt Reeves Batman sequel. So they're holding fire to see if they're confident enough to let James Gunn actually adapt Batman. I think, again, that's in touch with the fact that the Superman iterations are not connecting the way that they were hoping for. So they're not confident enough in letting James Gunn handle Batman yet. So we'll see what happens there. But that's really it, really, in terms of Supergirl spoiler review. There's nothing else to talk about in a movie that will be largely forgotten once we analyse the box office results after this opening weekend. So that's it really in terms of my spoiler review of Supergirl. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further movies, television series, or any other topics in the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know in the comments. And I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter in the future. Please hit and like those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.